I'll just bring you those. Well, good evening, everybody. Good evening and welcome to this very important and critical voter engagement forum. Let me first offer on behalf of the members and the friends of Cascade United Methodist Church, we want to welcome you to this place. It is so good to see so many of you here gathered at such a consequential time in our nation. In 48 days, think about that. In 48 days, we will participate in one of the most important elections of our lifetime. And so we are proud to host tonight's gathering in collaboration with the 100 Black Men of Atlanta and also Georgia Stand Up, two organizations that are deeply committed to community engagement and social responsibility. If you know anything about Cascade United Methodist Church, you know that we have been deeply committed to justice and equality and the betterment of all people. And tonight's forum is a reflection of that very mission. And we know that the power of our vote is one of the most critical tools that we have in shaping the future of our communities, our country, and even our world. And so tonight's conversation will equip us not only to have the knowledge, but also the tools that we need and the motivation as we approach this year's election so that we can make sure that our voices are heard at the ballot box. I want to take a moment to recognize some very important folks who have gathered with us tonight. Let me just first acknowledge if there are any elected or appointed officials among us tonight. Would you please stand that we can acknowledge you, all elected and appointed officials and any judges that we might have. Can we give God thanks for all of our elected officials? All right. Our appointed officials and all of our judges. We also want to recognize the chairman of the 100 Black Men of Atlanta, Brother Sid Barron, who could unfortunately not be with us tonight, but Sid sends his love, and we're deeply grateful for the leadership that he provides to us. We also want to recognize CEO Deborah Scott from Georgia Stand Up and the wonderful work that she does, and they brought some young people with them tonight, and I want us to take a moment to acknowledge all the young people who have come, who have been working and doing the great work. Would y'all stand so that we can acknowledge you? Come on, it's a Wednesday evening, and look at these good-looking young people who are here participating in this very important process. And so y'all keep doing what you're doing, and we're proud. We are so proud of the work that you are doing. And so, friends, I want us to open our hearts and our minds and get ready to engage and to learn this evening. And also to be inspired. We are in a church, and so I want to offer a word of prayer as we begin our time together. Lord, we thank you for this night. We are so grateful that in the great tradition of our ancestors, we come to engage in conversation, in dialogue, to engage in our civic responsibility to vote. Thank you, Lord, for all of those who made it possible that we might have this opportunity to lift up our voices at the polls. Lord, we thank you for this gathering space. We thank you for community. We thank you for these organizations. We thank you for this panel. We thank you for these leaders. We thank you for these young people. We thank you that even in our world, you are doing a great thing among us. Help us to recognize it and help us to lean into what you're doing and to do all that we can do so that we can see a reign of justice and freedom continue in this world. This is our prayer, this is our hope, in the precious name of Jesus our Christ. And everyone said amen and amen. At this time, it is my deep joy to bring up my 100 brother, who is the chair of our public policy committee through the 100 Black Men of Atlanta, Brother Dadisi Olatosin. Can we welcome him as he comes?
I'm about to spit 16 bars if anybody's ready. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dadisi Olutosin. I am the Public Policy Committee Chairperson for the 100 Black Men of Atlanta. It really warms our heart to see all of you here this evening. Thank you so much for taking time out of your evening to come here and be with us and learn, hopefully hear some engaging conversation with the panel and the moderator. So I won't be up here long. I'm just going to turn this over to the moderator for the evening, Mawuli Davis for Esquire, who is going to be asking all of the important questions of these esteemed panelists here. So thank you all. Give your attention. There will be a question and answering session at the end of this, but thank you very much again for your time.
Good evening, everyone. All right, we are excited to be here. It's always good to be back, good to be home. Our youngest was actually dedicated here many moons ago, and so we're grateful. And then, of course, my line brother, the great right pastor, Reverend Dr. Muriel, that's right, we're line brothers. You know what to say. Yo, all right. There we go. Represent. Thank you, Rev. Appreciate you. We're excited to be here and honored to be in this space. I bring you greetings from the brothers of the Black Man Lab and Let Us Make Man. Right now, they are en route to Brunswick. So we were in Savannah last night, so I drove here from Savannah doing a Black Man tour, engaging Black men in this critical moment so that we can make sure that they are ready and we are ready. So we support that effort. Tonight, I'm normally on the campus of Clark Atlanta University teaching in the Dr. Mack Henry Jones Political Science Department, but I think I have my students here tonight. So if you're CAU and there's Professor Parham from CAU, wave your hand, Clark Atlanta University. Yes, there we are, representing. And then from our law firm, we have a statewide practice, so we get to move around the state and we see what's happening to our people and why this moment is so critical. Whether or not we're going to have justice or we're going to continue to have to just fight and scrap for everything we get. And so we're grateful to be a part of this, and we're going to jump right in. I want to start with the law. Is that all right? Come on, I think you're on. All right. First, let's have, if you all would give us your 60-second introduction, and then I'm going to come back with a question that we've crafted for each of you based on your expertise, and then we'll talk a little bit more generally about some of the issues that we are concerned about and we need to be aware of. Our hope is that when folks leave here, we're all more empowered to go out and be ambassadors, to get people out to vote, why they should vote, get them registered to vote. Is that all right? All right, right on.
Well, Attorney Davis, I yield because I'm an alpha, ladies first.
And I accept because I am a Delta. So good evening, everyone. My name is Tanya Washington. I am a professor of law at Georgia State Law School for 22 years. And I'm also a voter. I'm also a mother. I have family in Atlanta and across the nation. And I am really glad that we are gathering in the tradition of our ancestors to have a conversation about what we can do in this moment to ensure that the realities that we experience after this election are different from the ones we're experiencing now.
Good evening, I'm Derek Jackson, state representative. Quick bio, retired from the United States Navy 20 years ago after doing 22 years. From there, I went to corporate America for 10 years, and in 2016, although he's not my frat brother, but my good brother, him and I, Brother Bodie, got elected in 2016, and January will be my 5th term. But my entire bio, the best thing that I enjoy the most, I am a husband and a father. And when you think about those 2 titles that I enjoy the most, I tell my wife and I, we have 7 children, 4 girls and 3 boys. We're empty nesters, thank God. And so, but I remind them about the importance of their civic duty and how important it is. And the best way I can demonstrate that is by doing the work that I do each and every day, by showing up and letting our voice be heard. And so I really love being a role model for our 7 children.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Howard Franklin. Also, husband and a father. But funny enough, to have this conversation this evening, my kids aren't yet old enough to vote. I got started in Atlanta after coming to Morehouse College, working for Maynard Jackson, running a youth voter nonprofit some 23 years ago. And hence worked on a number of political campaigns throughout the city. Some for names you guys would know, maybe a few that names you would not. But for the last 8 years, I've run a political consulting and government relations firm called Ohio River South. We are based in downtown Atlanta, but have about 50 clients across 12 southern states all across the region. So we keep a lot of fingers in a lot of different pies throughout the region and have stayed true to the commitment to helping people find ways to exercise their civic duty.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Christopher Bruce. I am the Policy and Advocacy Director of the ACLU of Georgia, setting the policy and advocacy programs that go across the state. I'm also the Senior Advisor of what we call the Southern Collective, meaning I have 12 Southern states that I consult with, mostly to engage Black people. The ACLU has a purposeful diagram of going towards Black people and saying, hey, a lot of the problems that we can solve in our society, we can solve if we educate, equip, and empower Black people to take control of their communities. I also give greetings on behalf of the Gate City Bar Association. I'm the president-elect of one of the oldest Black bar associations in the nation. We are very familiar with this church. I'm also a local Black man, meaning that I am here on behalf of the Atlanta Falcons that just won on Monday. Thank you. Did you just get that? Everybody got that? Okay. Let's keep this conversation going.
Wow, I don't know how I always end up after you. But my name is Fallon McClure. I am the Deputy Director for Policy and Advocacy at the ACLU of Georgia. So Chris is kind of my boss, but I really tell him what to do. And I am a community organizer at heart. I've been a community organizer for probably the last 10, 12 years, and taking policy and bringing it to the community in a way that is adaptable, understandable, and telling how it really, truly impacts your life is what I really enjoy doing. So I am happy to be here today. Thank you.
Helen, I want you to keep the mic. I want to start with you. ACLU, the work that you all do, let's just focus, say, across the state of Georgia. What are the legal and organizing issues that you all are seeing that you want to elevate for us to discuss and be aware of? And then how do you take on those challenges? I'm sure there are some.
Oh, that's a big question. So I think I'll start with the legal challenges. One of the biggest things that we're seeing right now is the chaos and everything around certification. We have a state election board that was appointed, has no one on there that was elected, that is making up new rules months before the election to create chaos and just really misinformation, and no one really knows what to do, right? And so that's one of the biggest legal things that we're saying, but of course, or seeing rather, but we are definitely fighting back. We have filed briefs in support of lawsuits against these new rules that are being implemented. We also have standard kind of lawsuit ready for if any county doesn't certify the election, and we know Georgia has 159 counties, that we will be ready to file as soon as that happens. We hope that that doesn't happen. We hope that people will essentially do their job as written and not, follow these new made-up rules. But so that's like on the legal front.
Let me add, just for clarity, when you say certify the elections, can you explain that process a little bit to us so we understand how it works in Georgia?
Right. So after voting ends, the votes are counted, and the county board of elections then says these are our votes, and they turn them into the state, and then the state turns all their votes in, and it just keeps going up, right, until we know how many votes for each person, no matter what office that they're running for. All of this is governed by the Georgia Code, and currently the code says that the county election boards shall certify. And it's essentially, it says shall, but all meanings of that mean that it's just something that they do, period. And what's happening with the state election board is they are making a big deal about the word shall and adding stuff around that so that the county election boards can ask for more information or essentially say, maybe we're not going to certify. And then if it's not certified, that means that the votes aren't counted, and that means we can't confirm who the winner of election is.
Thank you. And on the organizing front, because I know you all do double duty,
yes.
legally and organizing. In the organizing space, what have you been seeing?
So along the same vein, we've been really trying to combat the misinformation and disinformation that is happening right now. A lot of ways that we do that are through events like these and talking to the community. We also have other ACLU events like coming up. We have a Freedom School. It's a nod to this is the 60th anniversary of the Mississippi Summer Project and Freedom Schools, and we want to build on that idea of how the civic education of Black people really moves us forward. And so we will have a Freedom School on October 16th that will have different breakout sessions on like election safeguarding, misinformation, also the status of some of our other issue areas like reproductive rights and Senate Bill 63, which is criminal justice related. And then the other way that we are organizing is we are trying to make sure that people show up. Mm-hmm. Because we know that people have to show up. So we have a Get Out the Vote program this year. We're not really known for our Get Out the Vote, but what happens is I feel like every year we get a little close to election and our ED, Andrea Young, will be like, oh, we got to do something. And normally that means like 2 weeks for the election, I have to come up with something. So this year I decided to get ahead of it. So our Get Out the Vote program is called I Got 5 on It. It's 5 weeks of action starting October 1st through the 11-5 week election day. And each week you are supposed to contact 5 people and do what the action is. So like the first week, it's before the voter registration deadline. So it's call
October
and
7th, right?
Yeah, which is October 7th.
October 7th.
And so that week we're like, make sure you talk to everyone and have them check their voter registration or register to vote if they haven't. And then the next week is make a plan for early voting, and then it's early vote, et cetera. And so those are the things that we're doing around organizing. I'm sorry, I could probably talk about these things forever, but I will.
We appreciate you. We appreciate you. Since we're talking about law, I wanted to turn Representative Jackson coming with these laws, man. Like, I say they, even though you're down there, and we're not going to put it on you because you're fighting in our interest to try to prevent some of these laws from passing. But can you talk about some of the things that have been recently enacted that concern you that we need to be aware of, conscious of? And again, we're hopefully arming everybody here to go out and educate other people about how critical this is. So can you share some of your thoughts?
Absolutely. Thank you, Attorney Davis, for the question. And when you think about where we are today, you have to ask that one question: how did we get here? And we got here because of an action that took place June of 2013. June of 2013, the Supreme Court decided to gut the Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act. That particular piece was so critical, is what we call the pre-clearance requirement. Simply, all 50 states are required to submit any changes as it relates to voting to the Department of Justice. When the Supreme Court removed that provision in 2013, that's when 50 states went to work, 48 to be exact. And as we continue to progress, we started having elections after 2013. And if you look at the track record, I don't want to touch on, step on somebody's toes, but Republicans were losing. They were losing. And so fast forward in 2020, Georgia, you all decided to show up and show it out in 2020, which is the reason why we have a sister by the name of Ketanji Brown Jackson, right? Because they did not anticipate Georgia to do what Georgia did. And in 2021, they came out with more changes. Senate Bill 202, a 98-page document. And that 98-page document said, well, we're going to make it harder. So we're going to remove drop boxes, Fulton County. We're going to change voting ID requirements. We're going to change absentee ballot. 98 pages. And what we discovered, Attorney Davis, we showed up again in 2021 and voted Ossoff and Warnock, because Georgia keeps showing up because they changed the rules. But you know what happened, Pastor? They changed the rules again. This year, Senate Bill 189, they empowered the state election board. They started taking more rights from the Secretary of State. And so when you continue to change the rules and make it harder, especially in predominant black areas, because we know this, right, Attorney Davis? And so you got Senate Bill 202, 98 pages, Senate Bill 189, 24 pages. And so when you take these two documents, it made it easier to subjectively decertify your vote. And the reason why it's critical, we have partners like ACLU that filed lawsuits that said, you're not going to make it more challenging. Here's the thing. Out of 159 counties, with these two changes, if you get one county to not certify the vote, and it may not be Fulton, it may not be DeKalb, it could be Coffee, and that will hang up the entire process. They also made another rule change, Attorney Davis, where after 7 o'clock, they want to use paper ballots. We all are young enough in here to realize back in the early 2000s in Florida, we were trying to subjectively define, is that Chad open? Is it slightly closed? Is it halfway? And then who made the decision after that event? Y'all want to recall who made that decision? The court made a decision. And so I'm getting the red flag here. So the bottom line is they're going to continue to make the changes. Senate Bill 202 and Senate Bill 189. I'll be here after this event that we can get even a little more deeper. But you can Google, ladies and gentlemen, Senate Bill 202 and Senate Bill 189, and that explains where we are today in 2024.
I appreciate that. And I want to be very, very clear. Part of what we're trying to do right here, and I'm going to come to Professor Washington, is we want everyone to kind of understand they have erected barriers that we have continued to hurdle over, to find our way over, and this is going to have to be another one of those times. But we first want everybody to understand how far they have gone to do this. And I know my thing is that they only make it hard to vote because your vote matters, right? So talk about what your research, your work as a law professor, as an attorney in this space, again, lifting up so we're clear about what we're dealing with, and then we're going to talk about how we're dealing with it as well.
So one of the ways you know you're winning is they keep changing the rules, right? But we should expect them to change the rules, because instead of expanding the franchise so more people can participate, which is in the nature of a democracy, they want to limit it so that certain people will win. So when they implemented this, when this non-elected elections board created a rule that is in violation of the existing code, okay? So even in the making of the rule, they breached standards of due process. They are allowing people to make a reasonable inquiry as a precursor to certifying a vote. They are allowing people to examine all related documentation as a precursor to certifying the vote. The code says you shall, by November 11th, you shall certify the votes. And as the representative said, all it takes is one county. So let me tell you what happens if we don't certify the vote, because I think it's important for us to understand what the process allows. So if one of these counties doesn't certify such that a certified vote for the state is submitted to the Secretary of State, which is then submitted to the governor cannot submit and meet the deadlines that are prescribed by the Electoral College. So if the Electoral College vote does not yield a majority for one of the candidates, the House of Representatives decides who the president will be. Each state, regardless of the number of representatives, gets one vote. And if you do the math right now, it would be hard for one of the candidates to come up with 26, which would be the number that would allow. So the election you referenced, the Supreme Court decided. If this happens, the House of Representatives would decide it. Now, there are some things that we can do. I'm so glad that the ACLU and other legal organizations have lawyers on the ground that are prepared to file the lawsuits that need to be filed. The good news, no, I'm gonna start with bad news and end on the good news. The bad news is we should expect them not only to change the rules, but not to adhere to the rules that are in place. That's the bad news. The good news is that's what we're used to, right? We know how to shapeshift and pivot and respond. And I think we should just be prepared for the reality that the decision as to who is going to be the next president will not be decided 48 days from now. And that our work won't end advocating for people to follow the rules. It will not end on the day of the election.
You all ready? Seriously, are we ready, right? That's part of what this is about, is we need to know how they're moving so that we can then take whatever action we have to ensure that our votes count and this election is run properly. And so now we're talking about organizing. We've set the legal framework, thank you all. Now we're talking about organizing on the ground. Howard, I want to go to you. You've done a lot of campaigns. You consult a lot of folks. You know pretty much what's happening around the state. What are some of the strategies that you're seeing for us to try to engage and make sure that we maximize voter participation and that every vote is counted? What are you seeing on the ground?
Yeah, that's a great question. But before I answer it, I'm going to briefly cover a little more of the waterfront. I'm going to give y'all a little bit more of the bad news that Professor Washington was offering. A little bit, just a little bit, Chris. I'll keep it brief, I promise. Two other things have happened in legislation that was passed in Senate Bill 202 and 189. One of those allows for a more frequent and a more aggressive purging of the voter rolls by both the Secretary of State, and if you didn't think that was enough, if we hadn't set enough hurdles already to getting to the polls if you are a registered voter, we gave the Secretary of State more power to pull folks off the rolls for arbitrary reasons and rationales. And if even that wasn't enough, we went further and we crowdsourced challenging the validity of voter registration by individual citizens. So today, a citizen who doesn't know who you are could look you up, could say, hey, Howard Franklin, you live in what looks like a Democratic neighborhood, you're a Democratic super voter. You know, I think for some reason you ought not be on, or you must have done something, or maybe you don't live where you say you live, or you've missed an election here or there. I'm going to challenge the validity of your voter registration. So we've gone from, you know, the axis of evil existing inside of state government by the majority party to actually literally outsourcing it to MAGA activists all across the state, and then also empowering them to challenge voters en masse, not 5 or 10, but 15 or 20,000 at a time, which is crazy and has actually happened in the state of Georgia. So I offer that little bit of additional context.
It's a political deputizing a
That's
political
right.
lynch mob.
That's right.
Right? They have deputized a political lynch mob and said, go.
Exactly right.
Do
your
the
worst.
dirt.
Exactly.
Right. So
I say that to say I feel, you know, Representative was 100% correct. And I'd say I put a finer point on this. For the last 6 years, every 2 years, we've had an unforeseen set of obstacles to overcome. And every 2 years, we didn't even know how we're going to get across the finish line. And somehow, some way, it's happened. That's right. You know how. Well, this time around, we are yet again facing an unforeseen, unimagined set of challenges with how we cast our votes, how we exercise our civic duty. And I think that what some of these rule changes have forced us to do is to focus on something that we thought we pretty much had a handle on, which was registration. We thought, okay, once we get you across the finish line, you cast a couple ballots, we know, Attorney Davis, you are now a regular voter. We ain't got to worry about you no more. Now, and I was talking to a colleague of mine in my office who is a regular in-town super voter, and she was telling me about some girlfriends of hers who had been taken off the rolls, and people who are active voters in Grant Park, no less. And I say that to say I think that the battleground, a lot like Election Day, has moved up now. It's not just what are we doing on Election Day, what are we doing the week before, how are we getting souls to the polls, how are we managing transportation and line warming and, you know, all sorts of other things that last week or two or now 3 that constitute an Election Day. Now we got to make sure that you are qualified to be on the ballot or to cast a ballot before October 7th, even if you've already been an active and registered voter. And I just think that it's an incredible new hurdle, and I can't wait to tell, for all of us to come back here November 11th or 25th or whatever it is to tell us how we actually got over it, because today, I don't know the answer to that question. I just want to be 100.
wow. I'm thinking, what's our charge though? Like when everybody in this room leaves, what is it that they should tell their people? For the old folks, those who are on Facebook. For the younger folks on Instagram, TikTok. I mean, we're trying to create content that will take this information and say, hey, go to this site, check and make sure that you're still
That's
on
exactly
the road.
right.
So talk about that, and then, Brother Bruce, you know, you're going to have to give us hope, brother.
Give us a plate in there. Fallon already made mention of exactly what has to happen. It's on checking on each other. You can literally go onto the Secretary of State's website, and there's several others that allow you to put in your birth date, your address, your first initial, and your last name, and it will confirm where you are registered to vote, that you are a qualified and registered voter, what your polling place is, because we've also seen games played with whether or not folks are able to show up and cast a ballot at their polling place or moving polling places. So there are resources, but we do have to encourage all of our community. And I'll be honest, I just, by happenstance, the other day checked my voter registration. It wasn't, initially my thought was I vote so often every election, they wouldn't dare try this to me. But I bet there are plenty of people in the state of Georgia who would think the same thing, who will be rudely awakened on November the 5th to realize they've been purged by an individual or by the Secretary of State's office, and at which point there is nothing to be done about it. The window to cure is before October the 7th. Exactly right.
Everybody clear. We all have October 7th locked in.
Yes, my voter page.
We're going to pass. I know we're going to pass out information for folks to scan, to go on, to check. Everybody is about to leave here. If they deputizing folks, we deputizing folks, right? We've always had the deacons of defense. Am I right, Greg? All across the South, there have been deacons of defense defending our democracy and our right to be self-determining people. And so we've got to step to this and not allow them to create this terror and think that we're going to shrink from it. We're courageous people. Brother Bruce.
Good. No, I'm glad. I'm going to pick up right where you left off at. We're self-determination. I'm glad you said that. Because when it comes down to it, this country was not made for us, right? That's the acknowledgement. When they were designing that Constitution, y'all weren't in, well, you were in it. You weren't considered a person. That's why, have you ever just sat back and like, why are we always talking about the same thing over and over again? Talking about voting still. Like they passed laws to say, yeah, y'all can vote, but we're going to take it back. Gottfried voted in tremendous numbers. We were sending black people to Congress. And they were like, oh no, that's not going to happen. It has been this constant back and forth within it, which goes into really what's incumbent upon us. We're not voting at the levels that we should be voting into. And they're making sure that that power is taken away from us. And I'm going to go even deeper into this. I don't know, can I? I'm just going to say it. Why not? I got these people up here. These parties that are up here who are telling you just go vote, that's to keep them in power. That's to keep the parties in power. That's not to keep people in power. That's to keep parties in power. If the only thing that somebody's telling you to go vote, that's not enough. It's vote and. What else are you going to do in this democracy? If you are going to have a democracy, you have to engage your government. Otherwise, your government is always going to be engaging in taking away your civil rights and your civil liberties. So when it comes down to it, there are several things that you can do this upcoming election instead of just voting. You can work the polls. You know how you stop voter suppression at polls? You're the poll worker. Right. You can adopt polls, you can go, and you get paid for it. You can be the person in your neighborhoods helping people go vote. That is not illegal when you are a poll worker. You are literally there to help people in the community to go vote. We launched a program in 2020 called the Attorney to the Polls program, where we put an attorney at every polling location in Fulton County. Why? Because we somehow suspected somebody was going to be mad at the end of the election and said it wasn't fair. Well, if you had an attorney looking over every absentee ballot over it, and again, nonpartisan work. I don't care about your party. I care about, are you doing the right thing in your community? There are several things you can do. The Board of Elections, we're talking about certification and everything. How many of y'all have actually gone to a Board of Elections meeting? You ain't got to raise your hand. That's what I'm talking about. Raise your hand. That's what I'm talking about. That's where the power is. When they're shaping out where they put early voting locations, y'all ever wonder why you had to drive further one time than another time? They come up where early voting locations are. They come up where those polling precincts are. They come up with the buildings and the infrastructures for that. And I tell you what, as many times in years that they do it, a lot of times they don't know what they're doing. You can help them out to figure that out. If you know of buildings, churches, and infrastructures, you can actually be that person. And that's why the ACLU has a LEAD program. We will help you go in front of the Board of Elections and say, hey, this is the way that we can actually help you out in your community. And I'll leave off with this one. When it comes to voter suppression, Georgia became the first state to make it mandatory that police were trained on elections. Did y'all hear about that? Oh, yeah, the media only catches certain things. That's why you always have to constantly engage. Mandatory, the first state in the nation to train police officers in election law. And they're saying just in case they have to be deployed to the polls. I was like, what? Just in case? Do you know something that's about to happen that I don't know? Why would you don't train people in something that they're not going to do? Right? Let's just put it out there up there. I just got back from D.C. because they had a conference over this where they're talking about local election officials connecting with law enforcement and how they're going to deal with this. Why'd they invite me? Because they said, well, we want to hear somebody from the community because nobody else wants to talk to us. And I said, that's your problem. Your literal mission statement is connecting local election officials and law enforcement. Local election officials are supposed to serve the community. Law enforcement is supposed to serve the community. But you don't have the community in your mission statement. You don't have the community at the table. But the question is, is the community coming and demanding from people, you get taxed on this, demanding that they listen to you? That's where you can really bring in. But I'm going to tell you what, something's going to happen in Georgia. I'm not trying to scare anybody or anything else. Something always happens in Georgia, y'all. Right? They've been talking about Georgia this much since the Civil War. I don't know what's been going on for the past 8 years. But we need to get together. Brother, I appreciate you. I appreciate the people on this panel. But I'll tell you what, the people on this panel and a lot of you in the audience, I know y'all are tired. So we need to come together for this election and come up with a game plan of saying this isn't going to happen again. We are going to stop fighting over voting. We are going to get every equal right that we deserve.
Thank you. I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge Sister Deborah Scott is in the building. Can you stand up? Our fearless leader. She is a true advocate, voting right. We had them stand earlier, but they stand again. These are your babies. I know that. I know how you roll. Recruiting and empowering young people is one of the most powerful things that Sister Deborah Scott has done and continues to do, and also a proud graduate of Clark Atlanta University. So we're just going to keep repping that because I'm supposed to be on campus tonight. So this is our class. All right, let's go to work. Let's go to work. We've set it out. Everybody knows they have created a situation. Now, how do we win? How do we empower? Last night when we were in Savannah, we were in the mother church of AME Church, Monumental, St. Philip Monumental AME in Savannah. And in that basement, y'all know powerful things happen in basements of churches, historically, right? And so in that basement, we had all of these brothers talking about voting, and brothers are just sharing. And I got a text message today from a younger brother who was 27 years old, and he said, I wish somebody would have explained to us what we could do with the people, all of these young brothers and people that they knew who were talking about that they might not vote. Like, that's a thing, y'all. I know everybody in here is going to vote, but how do we, as leaders in our community who have the nephews and the kids that we coached in basketball and football and on the cheerleading, how do we give them the tools to make them understand the significance of voting and of registering on checking and then ultimately going and voting. Can we talk about that? Because we want to empower our people with some good, tangible things that we can do. You want to start?
Yeah, absolutely. So I appreciate the question, Attorney Davis. I asked the question, is Georgia a red state or a blue state? By the show of hands, who think Georgia's a red state? Think Georgia's a blue state? Is it purple? Okay, I'm gonna tell you, Georgia is a black state. Here's the reason why, Pastor. Here's the reason why. We have 3 million registered black voters in Georgia. You only need 2 million to send a black person to governor and lieutenant governor and labor. Just 2 million. The challenge is, and you already know this, Professor, the last cycle we had 700,000 black and brown voters that did not show up. We register them. We do a phenomenal job, right? The 100, Alpha, the Kappa, the Deltas, we do a phenomenal job registering folks. But we have to explain to them, Attorney Davis, from 18 to, let me see, Jimmy Carter's 99, from 18 to 99, you gotta vote. If we don't vote, then you're already making the equation harder. So we're gonna force them to do things that Attorney Bruce was talking about. We're gonna force them, right? We're gonna force them to change the law. We're gonna force them to subjectively try to decertify us. But if we don't show up, you're not giving us anything to fight with. So number one, Attorney Davis, we gotta explain to our 18-year-old that you gotta show up. Now, the reason why that's so important, because our 18-year-old, they do not understand the civil rights struggle. We don't teach Civics 101 in nobody's school in Georgia. They don't get Schoolhouse Rock. I'm dating myself. They don't get Schoolhouse Rock. And so if you don't understand the importance of the battle, why do I need to show up? I may go to Black Man Lab. I hear Attorney Davis telling me about criminal justice reform and Social Security going to be taken away with Project 2025, all this stuff. But if I don't hear that thing that stimulates my ear, you may register me. I may go to mvp.sos.ga.gov and do all that, but not show up at the ballot box. So number one, Attorney Davis, we got to say to show up and then explain to them that we cannot believe in the hype that they're giving our community, thinking that our vote doesn't matter because Georgia's a red state. It is not a red state.
Let me ask this. What's on the ballot for young black people? That's the question. That's what they want to know. How am I on this ballot? Beyond the people. Like when I cast a vote for the president, how is that going to impact my life as an 18, 19, 21-year-old? That's the, so speak to that. I got one, but I want to hear you all because it's important.
So, in my opinion, a vote is a transaction. Right? I give you my vote, and in exchange, you give me something that is going to improve my life. One of the things that young people, first, before we talk to them and tell them and explain, we have to listen to them, because they will tell you what they care about. So when I run into young people who say, yeah, I'm not gonna vote, I'm like, well, tell me why. I suppress the desire and the impulse to say, you mean you're not gonna vote? Do you understand people died so you could vote, so you could not exercise the franchise? That falls on deaf ears, and it doesn't prompt them or inspire them to exercise their power. But when you listen to them and ask them, why aren't you going to vote? Is it because you're busy? Is it because you just don't think it's gonna make a difference? Then you can have a conversation that helps them to understand what's in it for them. One of the things that I have shared with many young people who are particularly conscious about the relationship, the toxic relationship between law enforcement and our communities and our children, is that these elected officials are appointing judges that will make decisions about your lives, your cousins' lives, your brothers' lives, and whether they will live those lives in a cell block or whether they will live them in spaces where they have all of the opportunity that freedom provides, right? So when you break it down to something they understand, then they'll be like, okay, I can invest some time in doing this. The other thing, which I think is a long-term strategy, is take our children with us to vote. From when they're little. My oldest son is now 22.
We can take our 18-year-olds with us, can't we?
Yes, we can take all of them. But we want
Just
to
not
make
at gunpoint.
we want to make it a habit. Like, you go to vote. It's just what you do. You go to the grocery store, you go to the doctor, you go to the dentist, you go to the ballot box. I took my oldest son with me when walk into Fulton County, we're doing early voting, and this is how politically astute he was. We're in a room full of black folks. We walk in. He's like, come on, Mommy, we're voting for John McCain. And you would have thought somebody was going to call DFAX. He was laughing because he understood the joke. And I was like, you can get me bum rushed up in here talking this craziness. But take them to vote so it will just be natural.
Thank you. I want to hear if we can hit them really quick with some strategies. We'd love for you all who have questions to start coming to the mics, to mic 1, mic 2. If you have questions, please, this is our time. This is a moment for us to get these questions asked and answered. So you all want to give us some, again, I'm writing them down now. We're going to create something out of this, if y'all don't mind.
I think one of the biggest things, of course, beyond not shaming people for not voting and listening to what their issues are translating issues in a way that makes sense. So, for instance, many of you may have seen the awful story about the young woman who, because of Georgia's 6-week abortion ban, was unable to get the care that she needed and ultimately passed away, right? So while it might not seem like a big deal, I think when younger people are thinking about family planning and what access to resources are available, and this idea that if we have certain folks in power, their whole goal is to ban all of that, whether it's abortion, access to IVF, or even access to Plan B and other birth control things and other family planning methods, right? And so when we make those connections, I think another quick connection is like everyone is engrossed in the YSL RICO trial, right? Like it's a little comical. It shouldn't be, right? Considering it is people's real lives, but while everyone is watching that, one of the things that we are continuing to see is this expansion of RICO into ways that we've never seen it before on a state level, and it's sweeping up people by the hundreds, as we saw, and sometimes whether it was used against teachers or Cop City or alleged rappers that are part of gangs. I think those are the things that, when we connect the dots, it makes sense of why people should vote.
I'm gonna be real brief. I do 3 things: educate, engage, and empower. Right? We already talked about educating. I think the engagement part is what a lot of times people actually do forget about. And we're talking about what do they want. Well, if you want to know what they want, you got to go where they are. I can tell you what, y'all in here, y'all probably vote. I can tell you that. You know who's not voting? And they've said it. People on Old National. Okay, Old Nat. Who's been to Old National Day? Anybody? That's what I'm talking about. Ray, I know you've been to Old National Day, Bodie. Old National Day. When I was Stacey Abrams' political director of Atlanta, They were saying, hey, you guys got to come up with some events that you need to throw and everything else. I said, I don't want to throw any event. I want to tag on to community events in the community with people and leaders who are already there doing the type of work. It's a different way of looking at this, of saying, this isn't about you, this is about the community. You come to them. So yeah, Old National reached out and they said, hey, we have never had a gubernatorial candidate come to Old National. And you bring her, we're going to show out. It took a lot, but they had those three-wheelers. They had like 60 of them coming down the highway. It was a beautiful sight. Right, you know why? Because they were engaged. No one has gone down Old National to ask them for their vote. Why not? They are citizens. They can vote. And if you can get Old National, you can take the state. They just haven't been engaged in that type of way. You want to go to Summerhill. Those people in Summerhill already voting. We already know who they're voting for. You want to go to Forsyth. You might get a couple more votes there. Talk to the people that you really want, that we always talk about, that should be voting. But to do that, you need to go to them. They're not going to come to you. You need to go to their neighborhoods. You need to respect what they're saying, listen to them, and then you can empower them to actually go vote.
I'm going to be a little contrarian here. Of course I am, yes. I agree with you, Chris. I do think we got to go to where people are who are not engaged. But I'm willing to bet that everybody in here knows someone that they come in contact through the course of their daily lives. Another student that they share a classroom with, maybe a pupil, maybe a family member, maybe a coworker. I've been really surprised. Like a lot of folks on this panel, when I get introduced, people are like, oh, Howard does politics. You should engage him in politics. I went to House in the Park a few weeks ago and got thrust into a bunch of conversations that I was not looking for. But I will say, I met a lot of professionals, people my age, people who were homeowners and business owners who had wild things to say about voting, why they weren't, who they were voting for, and what the rationales were. And I considered it part of my community service that day to stay in some of those conversations that I otherwise would not have because they were just some foolishness when they started. But my point is, I think we should go to Old National. I might not, because I know people in my day-to-day life. And what I think it takes intentionality to do is to say, I'm not going to just ask you how your weekend was or what the kids did or, if you're going to this concert. I'm going to say, hey, have you made a plan to vote? Do you know who you're voting for? Do you know what's on the ballot? Right? I do this for a living. I am happy to answer any questions, to send you and route you to resources, but I want you to express yourself as a citizen. And I think we're connected enough, including Old National, to get to all the places we need to go to touch people who need to hear from a peer that it's really important that they turn out to vote.
All right. Thank you all for giving us. We're going to go to some questions, and again, we ask that you ask a question, keep it brief enough so that we can get some responses, and go from there. And if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, brother, welcome.
Absolutely. Greetings, everyone. Glad to be here tonight. My name is Ronald Allen. I'm a teacher and a minister, and original AT alien Grady baby. I hope I can provide a context for this question because I do have to label myself as a disaffected Democratic voter. I do feel as if I have a toxic relationship to the Democratic Party. I've been an organizer on 3 Democratic campaigns. The campaign to elect Hillary Clinton President of the United States, the campaign to elect Stacey Abrams, the governor of Georgia, and the campaign to elect Kamala Harris President of the United States. All 3 campaigns equaled in a loss. When I look at the agenda items that make up my voter platform, I keep seeing regression from Democratic leaders on these issues, both at the state level and at the national level. Joe Biden's student loan reform just was put in a clown suit by the Supreme Court. Reparations is not being taken seriously at any level of government in this country. I am so tired of being an underpaid worker as a black worker, being paid, 75% of what white males get paid in this country, walking around as an economic discount for employers. I am looking for a housing guarantee from the United States government. I would love single-payer health care, but it just continues to seem to me that the Democratic platform is that I need to be my own advocate. Tonight, people are talking about, well, be a poll worker. Well, I work 60 hours a week. I remember being with Professor Tanya Washington at the Auburn Avenue Research Library during or shortly after the Stacey Abrams campaign, when the outline of voter suppression was detailed, where the Koch brothers and other white wing institutions have set up think tanks and political auxiliary organizations that are churning out legislation for white wing politicians, so they don't even have to think, they just go in and rubber stamp these policies. Well, where is our institutions? Where are our infrastructures that are supposed to be representing the views of working Americans as wages continue to go down in this country, as every celebration of the labor movement is at least 60 years old? And I'm thankful to have weekends off. I'm thankful for a 40-hour work week, but we need additional.
In your question, brother.
So I'm asking, how can we heal this toxic relationship with the Democratic Party, where we as a racial group, as African Americans, we vote over 85% for the Democratic Party and yet continue to see regressions on our issues at the local, state, and national level? Because I'm tired of shouldering the entire burden of progressive politics on my own.
Thank you, brother. We appreciate you, Brother Allen. Thank you for that. And we can give him a round of applause. So, brother.
So I completely understand and share the frustration that you expressed. Voting is required but not sufficient. So we've got to vote, and then we've got to hold our people in office accountable, right? So many of us, black folks, stood in long lines in the middle of a global pandemic on the expectation that we were going to have the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, that we were going to have the George Floyd Policing Act. Now, we did get Juneteenth, but nobody was in the street hollering for Juneteenth. So after we vote folks into office, we have to hold them accountable. And what I'm asking myself, and I invite other black folks to ask themselves, of the two candidates running for president, who are we best able to hold accountable?
That's the question. That's the question.
So I want, if I may, Attorney Davis, so I just want to exchange contact information with you, give you my personal cell phone number, and I want to have a conversation. Because much of what you stated, there are some things I can answer for you, certainly at the state level. But I think it goes back to what Attorney Bruce said. You know, we have to do our part to inform the public. Listen, you all have busy lives. You have busy lives. It's impossible to require for you to know all 1,627 bills that goes through our legislative process under that Go Dome. I'm gonna say that again for those in the back of the pew. 1,627 bills. Of that, a third of them get to the desk of the governor. And so not all bills will be in the AJC. Not all bills will be on CNN or WSB TV. Now, the few that are very impactful or detrimental to the black and brown community will come out and we'll say, hey, Pastor, you got to get the word out on Senate Bill 202, right? But that was just one bill out of 1,627 bills. And so I want to share, let's exchange contact information, brother, and let's have a conversation.
I also want to just lift up, and I appreciate you coming forward, brother, is that we all have to have a political home, right? And we're not talking about political parties. We're talking about a political home. Just like you have a church home, what is your political home? Your political home could be with Georgia Stand Up. Your political home could be with Black Voters Matter. Your political home could be with New Georgia Project. It could be with ACLU. But we have to have a space that we're getting that information distilled for us, because we don't have time. But in those spaces, we get that. Deborah Scott, she's gonna send you the information in a way that you can digest it and you like, oh, okay, all right, this is the day I need to come down to the Capitol. I can't come all 40, but if you give me the one, I'll take off from work and get a babysitter and do what we have to do. So please, you all, let's find political homes that we can stay attached to. My brother, if you would, and then we're gonna come this side and then back to you, sister.
Thank you. My name is Brother Wendell Muhammad. I'm a representative of Minister Louis Farrakhan in the Nation of Islam here in Atlanta. You know, first of all, I thank all of you. You are so brilliant, and I'm just so at awe of the brilliance that we have. But one thing they say about insanity, is trying the same thing over and over, accepting a different result. And I think we kind of practice insanity. Attorney Bruce really hit it home. But where I'm going is, I'm just going to make my statement and ask my question, that it really boils down to no matter which party wins, the die is set for the masses of black people. If you ask what's going to take place after November 6th, what are we going to get out of it? And we can really say nothing because neither party has our interest, because for the last 30 years, our elected officials have become unpopular to advocate for specific needs of black people. We just don't, it has to include everybody. I don't know if we're worried about the white lash. I don't know what it is. But my question revolves around, since we have to come out of this mindset that voting is the panacea to our problem. I believe that black vote is powerful, but it's only one aspect of our existence. Yes. And we focus only on voting. Because right now, with all these white groups, with Project 25, they got all these groups that they organize and planning for their people. Where we go wrong is we don't organize and plan anything for ourselves. So I'm asking us, November 6th, we have to not only push to get out the vote, but we have to organize ourselves. Because no matter who gets in office, economically, we bring out of the economy $1.3 trillion. So we are not a powerless people. So I'm only suggesting that we have to organize ourselves not only politically, but has to be economically, educationally, and we only do one. Then after November 6th, we go right back to sleep because this is the only time we mobilize ourselves. So I'm asking us, what are we going to put in place if Trump wins or if Kamala Harris wins? If she wins and open up something for us to benefit from, we don't have any programs in place to take advantage. And if Trump's winning and saying, I'll give you nothing, he still don't have the power to stop us from making progress if we organize ourselves to advance ourselves in this economy and this society which we live in. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I hear, where is our black agenda? Everybody seems to have an agenda. Where is our agenda that we can take to whoever wins and that we can keep moving 365 days a year? Can we address that issue?
I can add a little bit to what was said here. I think there are not actually a shortage of black agendas. They may not be in coordination. They may not be aligned. They may not all be talking to one another. I think there are a lot of silos. We worked with the Urban League of Greater Atlanta, put together an agenda for the state of Georgia. I know Black Economic Alliance. I think a lot of organizations commission reports, if that's what we're talking about. Yes. I want to say two things to the brother's question or his statement. I mean, one is it's very easy to get myopic about this election, right? We're looking at two polar opposites for President of the United States of America. It's easy to gloss over the fact that Georgia has 6,000 elected officials, right? 600 cities, 159 counties, 100 school boards, 100 transit authorities. There are a lot of important and impactful decisions to be made right here in our state. So I'm going to agree that at some level, the steering wheel on this country is going to be hard to turn. It's going to take a lot of hands on that wheel. It's going to take a lot of time, a lot of effort. The thing that I'm encouraged by is that, and Professor Washington, you're going to laugh at this. The last Congress we had, the 117th Congress, I think was the least productive Congress in like 60 years. I think they passed 24 total bills. the 117th Congress. We're in the 118th right now. For the last, let's call it 10 or 12 years, real national policy has bubbled up from state legislatures, from city halls of big American cities, many of that are led by black people. I was at an event, I hosted an event this weekend, thank you, sir, in DC, in partnership with the African American Mayors Association, and they're a proud organization that will gladly tell you some of the largest cities in this country, some that are not majority African American, San Francisco, I'm gonna blank on a couple names here and get in trouble, like New York, Los Angeles, Dallas, are run by black people, and those are not majority minority cities. So the point I'm making is that it feels really daunting to say, how do I get Donald Trump or Kamala Harris to adopt our agenda? And I think we shouldn't stop fighting for that outcome. But one of the ways we do that is to get the 236 members in the Georgia General Assembly, 180, 179 that are colleagues of our representative here who represents his district ably. It's to get some of these big city mayors and these school superintendents and transit authorities to also start looking at policy. And when you make policy that makes waves, DC will take notice. And when you have that opportunity, when you align like President Obama did for the first 2 years, had a Senate, had a House that was Democratic, and had the White House, you can get a lot of things done. But it does take alignment. It isn't one screw we can turn, it isn't one wheel we can turn, and there isn't one election we can win to achieve a black agenda.
And I know we're almost out of time. I do want to try to answer, at least get these next two questions asked. Go ahead, brother.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Daniel James Gilstrap. I'm a lifelong resident of Atlanta, Georgia, and I have two quick questions. One, a follow-up to what you all have been saying. What does it look like to engage with our elected officials after we have voted them in? It is a thing that you have all encouraged, yet I don't think it is a thing that we know how to do and actively engage in. And the question I wrote down is, how do we ask people to invest in the same culture of politics, considering some could argue it's performative security theater instead of tangible actions at a rate in which is a person's lifetime, especially when politicians can't share how they really feel or be at risk of damaging one's social capital, which can prevent any progress that can be limitedly achieved by good faith actors we believe in and have allowed to serve us.
Hey, brother. Let's give it up for the brother.
Yeah. I say all that to say that we've elected a lot of officials that in the last few years have said certain things and have had certain policies that they have definitely gone against. On the local level, more than 100,000 people signed signatures to rectify that they want Cop City to be on the ballot for this year's vote, and yet our city council has done a lot to be against it. On the national level, we have elected senators that have said that they are not going to invest in the IDF, and yet they have taken money from them. What does it look like for people to ask them to do right by us? Because if 100,000 people isn't enough, what is a satisfactory number of people to engage in these issues?
That's right. You're not even asking for an ask. That is a demand, right?
It's an ask because I'm trying to be polite and I don't see myself as an actor of power. I don't see myself as an actor of power. And for being honest, as the black community, we do recognize that certain people have more say and more investment in who gets to erect these things. I'm a regular average citizen. At the end of the day, I'm an individual artist. That is not a role in this community that we have valued and allowed to speak or has the time to engage and speak with these policies, especially considering that part of the reason I say that is because Georgia is 50th in funding for the arts. So to be honest, a career in the arts means nothing here. It's not something that we tangibly invest in, even if we say things like, we believe in the artists, we believe in the people of the city. No, we don't. Our actions don't say that. So what does it mean to actually ask people to honor their actions?
Thank you, brother. We appreciate it. If you would let
Thank you.
Us have some response.
Thank you, brother, for that question. I think that's a great question. The first one, I didn't get the second one. So dealing with the first one, I love the idea of, again, it's not do you know your elected official, it's does your elected official know you? So you're right. Voting throughout this whole process, they're coming to you. They're going to places and events, holding their own events, saying they want your vote. After that, you need to be in their face and saying, what is your agenda? How are you going to get this done? Because they already laid out a plan of saying, this is what I want to do, this is how I want to get it done. Check up on them. Make sure you have their phone number, emails, everything else. Because like you said, when it comes to Atlanta City Council, If you don't like what happened with Cop City, well, next year they're up on the ballot. Vote them out. And make sure that you do. Do not do some lackadaisical effort because you can't. So this is one of the times that the democracy era does work. If somebody else is coming to you and they're saying, I know you're being nice about it too. If someone's coming to you and saying, hey, I don't like the way that you're voting, I want to go forward with this agenda. If that agenda does not agree with you, if you are a citizen and you're a resident of the city of Atlanta, you can openly tell them, I'm getting you out. Find somebody else that you can put in place to do that as well.
There's an upcoming election.
It's 2025.
In City Hall for some of the folks who are going to make decisions that impact the city. And so, as Kwame Ture, formerly known as Stokely Carmichael, organize. We got to be in organizations. We have to be organizing. And sometimes, to be quite frank, here in what we call the Black Mecca, we have to organize even in contradiction to Black elected officials if they're not standing for the values that we are standing for. And so that's not a trip for me, because you got to stand off with folks, you have to stand off. We all have values that we want to fight for, and you have to be willing to organize for them and disrupt at times. I know we want to just make it easy. Sometimes it's not easy. I don't get invited everywhere. I get invited here, though.
You get invited to the smart places.
If I can address because I hear this often about what is our Black agenda. Listen, I would be the first to admit that our Black agenda is the same as our Black agenda, ladies and gentlemen, back in the Reconstruction era for 14 years, there were Black men, elected men, that created HBCUs. There were Black men that created land grants. There were Black men that created the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. So when you think about our Black agenda is civil rights. Our Black agenda is voting rights. Our Black agenda is the Affordable Care Act. Our Black agenda is allowed to have a Black pastor to be a Black pastor in a church this size. Our Black agenda is to say we're going to create a city and call it the city of South Fulton. Our Black agenda is to take down a Confederate statue and erect a John Lewis statue. So I'm trying to tell you all, hold on, brother. I'm just telling you, our Black agenda is not a single issue. We fought hard to get that Confederate statue down. And in place of it today is a John Lewis statue. And when you hear a presidential nominee saying, listen, I get it. I can't call it reparations, so I'm going to call it economic opportunity. And so if you want to start a business, I'm going to give you $50,000. If you need to be a part of this American dream, I'm going to give you $25,000 to get a home. And I understand when you start a family, $6,000 credit for that child. So no, it doesn't say Black or brown, but we all leverage that. When we created the affirmative action helped us produce 5.7% Black doctors, 3.4% Black dentists, and 1.3% Black lawyers. So our Black agenda is not just reparation. Our Black agenda is to make sure that we live a long life. So if that's the George Floyd Act, we're going to hold somebody accountable to get the George Floyd Policing Act done.
Our final question. Thank you so much for your patience, sister. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Christy Lindsay, obviously Black. I am a mother. I'm a small business owner. I'm a wife, all the things. I want to pivot a little bit, and I know we are about to be out of time, but if you all could give us maybe the top 2 or 3 things that you all know from Project 2025 that as Black Americans we need to be most concerned about and can share with others who are like, oh, voting is not going to make a difference. And we're like, if you don't vote, this might happen, this might happen, this might happen. Yeah.
Thank you. That's a great question. And Project 2025 was definitely one of my questions, but we got tore up a little bit. Start us off, and if we can, we're going to be very disciplined. 30 seconds each. Just hit it.
I brought some notes. I'll make it really brief.
Perfect.
Because what people don't realize is that the Mandate for Leadership is actually a 41-year-old project by the Heritage Foundation. And it has been produced since the first year of the Reagan administration. So I don't want people to be misconstruing the idea that this is some new thing that we're dealing with. This has been around for 41 years, every 4 years. And just a couple fun facts. President Reagan, at his first cabinet meeting, handed out copies of then the Mandate for Leadership. Experts within the Heritage Foundation and outside said that within the end of President Reagan's first year, 60% of the recommendations that had been included in that book were actually policy made by the president and by the Congress. And last one, I know we joke about the fact I think it's 922 pages. The first version of Mandate for Leadership, a 20-volume, 3,000-page publication with over 2,000 policy recommendations. So Trump won't be the first president to be faced with the Mandate for Leadership. And if he does make it to the White House, you better believe some of the stuff is going to get enacted.
Thank you. Yes.
I think the top three quickly for me would be stop paying overtime, stopping criminal justice reform by taking legal action against local prosecutors, meaning they would increase sentences, increase the use of death penalty, expand RICO, and then, of course, do away with public interest loan forgiveness.
I'm going to go quickly and say, like Howard said, this stuff is already in play. Okay? I'll end on what I began with. This country was not designed for you. The Democratic Party just let in black people. Okay? So that's something that we all need to think about. So Project 2025 is just another symbol that's got a hashtag to it. But these type of policies and everything else, they're targeted towards our communities, and we can fight back with it. But that starts with voting, but it ends with you holding elected officials accountable.
So I looked at this document, and I teach education law, so I was particularly interested in the impact of this agenda or contract on America. It's had different names over time. The abolishment of the Department of Education would have a devastating effect on our kids. It spells out the words that they don't want in any regulations or rules, no reference to diversity, inclusion, equity, gender, affirmative action. Like, it lists the words that they want excised from all government regulations, legislation, policies, etc. But getting rid of the Department of Education, which has at least infused our public schools, which children are compelled to attend, with some measure of equity, I think would be devastating for our communities, because our children need to be educated so that they will grow up and feel empowered to be the change and make the changes that they need to make for future generations.
My top three, I perused this 922-page document, and I could not find not one page, not one paragraph, not one sentence in there for us, not one. So number one, it would dismantle the Constitution. Although it's imperfect, but it would dismantle the Constitution, specifically the 13th Amendment, 14th Amendment, the 15th Amendment, and the 19th Amendment. Those are the four that it would dismantle. They do not want women to vote. In fact, J.D. Vance said there are three things a woman should be able to do. Be a grandmother, a wife, and a mother. That's it. That's what he said. Google it. So number one, it would dismantle the Constitution. Number two, I'm taking care of my 87-year-old aunt. It will eradicate Social Security. Let me tell you, it's so expensive to take care of an 87-year-old person. If you take away Social Security, that's going to negatively impact a lot of black and brown families. And then number three is immunity. Listen, it speaks to sovereign immunity, giving police officers sovereign immunity. You think we have it bad now, but when you think, so they got qualified immunity now where, you know, they don't have any criminal, but they can still be held civil, which is the reason why, you know, right, you know, folks like Attorney Davis and Attorney Bodie and others, they can get those civil awards when they hold them accountable. But only 2% of police officers are convicted. That means the other 98% are not. If you give them sovereign immunity, which is what we have, that means they cannot be liable for civil or criminal. So that it would be devastating. And then I know you said 3, but last but not least, Project 2025, it is a little bit different though than the one that Reagan had. The reason why it's different because Kevin Roberts, the one that authored this newly revised version in 2003, he did his PhD thesis on the control of enslaved, control Louisiana slaves, how they think and how to control it. So out of all the things you can do your PhD doctoral thesis on, it was to control black people. And so when you look at Project 2025, his fingerprints are all over it.
Thank you all. Thank you for, let's give it up for a church that would have us come into a space like this for organizations like the 100 Black Men of Atlanta, Georgia Stand Up. This is important work. We hope and pray that you've received the information that will empower you. I know that it's been a long evening, but I know that some of our panelists will be here to answer any questions as we walk out of the sanctuary. And again, thank you all. It's been an honor, and it's really been an honor to work with all of you all over the course of many years. So thank you. All right, the brothers who put it together. This is our second time connecting.
I know, man. It's been a busy day, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Antrell Tyson. I serve on I'm with the 100 Black Men, serve on the board, and also serve on the Public Policy Committee. And in my day job, I work in the federal space. However, I have to full disclaimer, I'm here in my 100 role, so I don't want to get in trouble. But because of my work and my perspective, I do have a little more to add because these are a phenomenal panel. You guys covered everything. But I also want to marry the two themes that I heard today: empowerment of your vote and self-determination, and holding our politicians accountable. I work in the policy space, so I get to see what policy look like before we are able to implement it on the ground. And I want to tell you, it does make a difference. It does make a difference. So I did hear a little discontent about how the Democratic Party, or one of the two parties, serve you. Just think about what is at stake here. We have an opportunity to send or not send the first Black woman to the White House. In the same vote, we have the opportunity to have or not have our first Black man Speaker of the House, who controls what bills come to the floor for a vote. In the same vote, we have an opportunity to have 6 or not have 6 members of the Congressional Black Caucus chair meaningful committees that determine which policies make it through committee to land on the desk of the first Black man Speaker of the House who could pass a law to go to the White House. And this didn't happen overnight. It happened because we continued to fight. We continued to show up. So politics is slow. However, they're waiting on you to quit. That's why they keep doing it. So if you don't feel like you have a say in this party, tell the 60 members of the Congressional Black Caucus, the most that ever been in Congress, that your vote don't count. Something got them there. And so as a member of the federal government, We need you to help us help you.
So my name is William Bodie. I am a former state representative. Got an honor to serve my dear brother, Derek Jackson, serving House District 62, parts of South Fulton, and also parts of Douglas County. Before I get into my closing, I want to make sure I recognize all the elected officials in the audience this evening, because some came in. I know the city of South Fulton council members had a meeting tonight and they came over, so I want to make sure you all stand and be recognized. And thank you all for being here, and thank you for your service. I just want to say this in a brief closing. It's that me and my wife, Deborah, talk about this all the time. Voting has been here before us, it's here now, it's going to be here after us. We have to engage our community to vote, because if we don't vote, somebody else is still going to vote. And they're going to be voting for interests that affect us on a daily basis. So we need to first get to the starting line. The starting line is voting. That puts us in the game. But if we never get to the game, we don't have a place or a space to bring our issues to a table, because we're not even at the table. We're not even in the room. So I want to make sure that we, I would say, empower our community to do this. Our young people, our older people, people that are our age, people that look like us, don't look like us, because it is critical. Because this election, like all elections, is about choices. Choices. We have an individual right now that's running for president of the United States, and I'll be honest with you, sad. He will be a dictator. Who wants Caesar in the White House? We have a choice. I know elected officials sometimes get a bad rap, sometimes have a lot on their shoulders, sometimes don't get the things done that we want them to get done. But they are elected officials, and we elected them to be there, and we have to hold them accountable. But also we have to give them grace as well. A lot of times, as this brother just said, Brother Tyson, the electoral process, the government process doesn't move very quickly. I know, because I've been down there at the Gold Dome. But we have to make sure we have people in place that we can actually go to and say, look, you're not doing what I would like you to do. Can you do X, Y, and Z? But if you have another candidate there, they might not listen to you at all. That door is never open. So let's do, as a very prominent historic figure told us about 3-4 weeks ago, let's do something. Let's actually do something. And when we get the elected officials in office, let's make sure we hold them accountable. But let's do something and energize and electrify this base to get out to vote for our candidate that's going to take care of us up and down the ballot. Because that's the only way we will have a seat at the table, and it also will determine how big that seat will be at the table. Thank you. And Pastor, can you close us out in prayer?
One more time, can we appreciate all of our panelists and all the organizers of tonight? We're done. You all can stand. Thank you again. Thank you. And thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up, and thank you for doing the work. Y'all ready to go and vote? Come on, are you ready to go and vote? Well, let's go forth now, and let's go do the work. Amen.